Right, ladies and gentlemen, it is time once again for a big one, and a heavy one at that, because inside this box we have something truly special and something I've not actually ever seen before. And I know what you're thinking, it's a gaming monitor. Let me guess, this is going to be £2,000-3,000, it's going to have every spec you've ever heard of, and it's going to be cool, but it's not going to be of interest to me, right? Well, actually you'd be wrong, because while this isn't necessarily a cheap gaming monitor, as this comes in at around about £570 at the UK, this is the first 40-inch ultra-wide monitor that we've ever seen on the channel. And if you didn't already know, I actually use a 38-inch monitor for pretty much all of my day-to-day activities. I love it. I think it's pretty much the perfect size, but then part of me thinks when I'm gaming, maybe we could do with just a little bit more. And that's exactly where this thing comes in. So allow me to formally introduce you to the AOC Agon AG405UXC. This is a 40-inch ultra-wide gaming monitor, IPS 144Hz, with a resolution of 3440 by 1440. Let's get this thing unboxed and actually see if it's any good, right after a short word from this video sponsor. Corsair's iCUE Link is here to revolutionise your gaming PC. This brand new ecosystem stops cable clutter in its tracks, with interconnecting components removing the need for endless cables and giving you more control over your PC than ever before. Grab some interlocking QX RGB fans for dual light loop beauty, an H150i iCUE Link cooler for next level CPU thermals, and connect up to a whopping 14 devices to a single iCUE system hub. Learn more today with the link down below. Rightio then, let's actually proceed and get this thing unboxed, which is always easier said than done when the box is this big. It's like we have to play a game called Try Not to Break Anything. No, I've ruined it, I don't like it. Ugh. We'll do it on the floor. We have our stand, and then we have the monitor itself, which is looking pretty large, but then again, compared to something like a 42-inch TV that just has so much more vertical height, it actually seems comparatively small, which I think is fantastic, because I know there are loads of different people that watch this channel, and everyone loves different sort of sizes and form factors of monitors. But the thing for me is that I just love an ultra-wide because it means you can have so much more screen real estate without having to have something that just causes you a little bit of eye strain or just looks gigantic on your desk. And again, everybody's different, but I think this is going to be right up my alley. And it also seems to be comparatively flat, which is interesting because personally I do like to have a slight curve on it, not like, I don't know, Samsung or other people do where they have some sort of extreme curve. I think that's a bit much for me, but interestingly enough, this is flat, that some people are going to love, but it is going to mean that the corners here are going to be quite far away from you, which is going to be very noticeable if you're playing something like Age of Empires, when you've got like a very small UI in the top right hand corner. Trust me, that is going to get a little bit annoying. Otherwise though, I have to say that I really do quite like this design. It's nice and premium feeling. It's plain enough that it can fit into any setup without looking too garish, but it does have a few gaming elements as well. It appears we have some screws that we need to remove first. This is actually a used sample, so maybe someone wall mounted this before I did. It's nice to know that you can do it. Standard VESA 100 by 100, but obviously this will get quite heavy. So if you are going to mount an ultra wide, please make sure it can actually take the weight. But if you can use the stand, it does just drop into place like that. Oh, and then it screws in as well. So let's get this safe and secure. Then we can grab the base and just screw it in. Then, oh, okay, that is heavy. We should have our monitor. What do you reckon? You see what I mean? It looks plain enough, doesn't it? But also exciting enough. I think they've done a crack job on this, actually. I don't know, is that a phrase? We're going to go with it. This is a fantastic looking display, you have to say. There is a little bit of wobble though. I mean, you could get rid of that by wall mounting it, but that is a little bit more than you'd expect. But obviously the bigger display you have, the more vulnerable, if you like, you are to this sort of effect. But around the back here, you've got two HDMIs. I believe these are HDMI 2, not 2.1, as there's not really any need to have the extra bandwidth. It's not high res enough. You've got DisplayPort for PC, USB-C, which is nice, headphone, USB upstream, and then the plug-in for the little controller that you get inside the box. Oh, look at that! That is so cute! Look what you get inside the box. This little screwdriver, in case you don't already have one. Well, we've got a PC hooked up. Let's turn this on and actually see whether it works, which at the moment it looks pretty dead, doesn't it? Oh, no, you just got to push the button. There we go. We're on, and we're in. And I've got to admit already, I love the size. I think this is just what you want. I mean, bear in mind this is quite a large desk, but it's nothing like crazy. You could still happily have your PC here, have your whole setup, and it is going to fit. And again, if you're buying like a 42-inch or maybe even like a 46, 48-inch TV, it's just going to take up so much space. You're going to need like a full-on dining table to actually get this to fit. You also have quite a lot of adjustments here, plenty of swivel, way more actually than you'd expect. Viewing angles, because this is an IPS, are also going to be very good. You've got up and down tilt, and you do actually have a little bit of height adjust. Oh, I mean, that isn't as smooth as it could be, but generally speaking, I don't think you're going to have an issue here. Not bad. I mean, you know what? Actually, why don't we go a step further and actually build up a full setup on this desk, so when we get gaming, you get a complete picture of everything. Just give me a few minutes. Rightio then, here we are, all set up and mostly ready to go. I mean, some of you will recognise a lot of this stuff because I do tend to use it in quite a few videos, but this is typically the sort of gaming setup I would actually build for myself. Love all of these things. This is the Logitech G915. This was sent out years ago actually by Logitech for a sponsored video. 10 keyless, love this thing. Got so used to it actually using other keyboards are quite difficult. We've got the Logitech G Pro as well. Personally, I actually prefer the Superlight version. This is just the standard one in, believe it or not, lime green, even though this is basically definitely a yellow mouse. But anyway, again, that was sent out by Logitech a couple of years ago. We do, of course, have the PC-centric mouse mat that you can now buy. Link to this is down below. Nice quality product, great print, something a bit different. Go grab it today. And then last, but certainly not least, we have the computer. And this is one we built on the channel a few weeks ago now. This is actually one that we did in collaboration with PowerColor. This is like the all-white build with a 6700 XT. And the reason I wanted to use this one is because I think this is probably the sort of graphics card that most people are going to be looking at really for a monitor that costs around about £500. I mean, yes, we could have used a 4090, but that's not really reflective of what most people are actually going to pair with a monitor like this. So far so good. Definitely noticed when I sat back down after downloading all the games that this is a fair bit bigger than normal. But actually I want to start with the pixel density because this isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It's better than a 24-inch 1080p monitor, but it's slightly worse than a 1440p 27-inch or of course a 34-inch 3440 by 1440 ultra wide. It's not necessarily going to matter to anyone really that just plays games because I think it's still sharp enough and it still looks better than what a lot of people will be used to. But if you are someone that is going to be doing a lot of work on this thing and you need as many pixels as possible, or maybe you're editing photographs, or at least you want it to look as good as possible, you're going to have to spend more. But interestingly enough, you can't really find, or at least I couldn't find, any 38-inch ultra wides with this resolution. So this very much is not the absolute first, but it's the first one from a big name that actually properly utilizes this panel. So that's 40 inches, 3440 by 1440. Yeah, it's probably about right. But anyway, let's move on to something that is a lot more important, which is the actual performance of this display. And before we get gaming, I do want to have a quick look at the responsiveness of this panel. And it's typically where you would expect it to be, which I think is a good thing. I mean, this is IPS, not VA. So while you are going to get some blur on this, it's nowhere near as good as like a, I don't know, 240, 360 Hertz IPS display, or anywhere near as good as an OLED. But the blur that you do get is quite consistent. It's not like this horrible black motion trailing that you'll find on a lot of cheaper VA panels. That's why I tend to stay away from VA on gaming monitors. They're definitely not all bad, but especially the cheaper ones tend to have like a horrible look to them with a lot of ghosting. Again, this one is pretty much where you'd expect it to be, which is very good for general purpose gaming. But if you are looking for the absolute best performance, or maybe you want to play games at high refresh rates, so 240 Hertz esports level, clearly this isn't going to be the right one for you. But I think it's going to be where most people sort of want it to be, which is in that sweet spot of affordability and decent performance. But let's waste absolutely no more time at all and actually jump into some games, starting with our FPS, some Apex Legends. Right, okay then, here we are in Apex Legends. We're jumping out of the jet and immediately that immersion is definitely appreciated. I think this is one of those games that you will lose a little bit of vertical resolution. It kind of zooms in a little bit rather than expands out. Some games will do that, but I think as this is competitive, they try and keep it as fair as possible. It's not a bad way of doing it. Some games don't even let you actually have ultra wide. You'd be limited to 16:9. So I suppose in that regard, it's a good thing, but do be aware that you are going to be losing a little bit. Oh my God, I just want to play the game. Right, so let's try that for a second time, shall we? And I will say that when you are dropping out of the plane, it's I don't want to say noticeable because it's not necessarily a problem, but you are aware of the fact that the resolution isn't quite as sharp as you'll find on some other monitors. I mean, again, I'm coming from a 38-inch ultra-wide that has a resolution of 3840 by 1600, which is quite a big step up really, but then you have to push all of those extra pixels. You need a better graphics card to actually achieve this, and obviously it does push the whole cost of the setup up, if you like. But I mean, in terms of blur and things, you definitely can notice that this is not the highest frame rate in the world and you don't have an OLED monitor, because when you move around you can see that little bit of trailing, which is going to affect you when you're doing quick turns. But actually just sort of roaming around the Apex Legends world that most people are going to be doing when you're not in combat and things, I think you'd be very hard pressed to notice that this isn't such a top end level monitor when it comes to responsiveness. But if you're after immersion, I would say that this is actually that perfect sort of sweet spot really between as much size as you can possibly get that actually still retains your field of vision without having to sort of be looking left and right like you would with like a super ultra wide or something like that. I think for me it's about right. I would also like to point out, by the way, that this is a monitor that does pack in some baked in speakers, and obviously they're not going to replace a soundbar or proper headset, headphones, anything like that. But it's surprisingly not bad. It's definitely lacking in the bass department, but I'm using it now and I'm not hating myself. They're everywhere! Oh, it's a disaster. Oh, just leave me alone! I'm out of practice. Let us take this opportunity to move on to our next title though, and this one is actually brand new to the channel. It's brand new really. This is some Diablo 4, and obviously this is a bit of a different game. It's not going to be all about immersion, so to speak. It's kind of, I don't know, it's almost halfway between a game that you can take really, really seriously, but then also one that you're playing more for the story and to sort of experience everything. And it's quite flexible, this display, and how it actually shows everything. I have to say that I have been enjoying my time in Diablo, and actually playing on this monitor I think works for me. I know if you take it super seriously, again, you probably want everything to be a little bit more on the smaller side, shall we say, so you can sort of keep track of everything that's going on. But as you have quite a lot of small elements on screen anyway, it's quite nice for them to be enlarged so you can actually see the character models in a little bit more detail and actually appreciate the game world. But it's going to depend how seriously, I suppose, you want to take Diablo, but I'm quite enjoying it. And I think the fact that it is actually flat rather than curved actually helps with this particular title, because you're not getting any of that sort of distortion from anything around the edges. There's obviously quite a lot of straight lines, so if there was a game that it was going to be quite noticeable, it probably would be Diablo. So that was a little bit of Diablo. How about we move on to something even more immersive with some Hogwarts Legacy? And you know what? This is a game that looks absolutely phenomenal on this display. This is pretty much what this is all about. It's just so flexible in that you can play something like Apex on it, but it really does come alive when you have all of these crazy vistas and all of these lovely visuals to actually take in. And it's just so comfortable to actually have on your desk. I mean, I don't think everyone's going to agree with me. It will take some getting used to, definitely. I mean, the first time I went for a 34-inch ultra-wide, I remember thinking it was really big. So 40 is definitely something else. But when you compare this to the screens that are even bigger, like the 42 or 48-inch PC monitors or the 45-inch ultra-wide from Corsair or LG, personally speaking, I think this is just in that real sweet spot. I would probably love a little bit more resolution to make it look even better, but I think ASC have made the right decision in keeping the resolution at 3440 by 1440, as it is at that sweet spot again of affordability and the way that it looks. I mean, by all means bring one out with a higher resolution and sell it for a higher price, but I think most people will probably be better off with this, especially bearing in mind we're currently getting around about 80 to 90 FPS, so once again, if you were to go even higher, you would have to spend a lot more on a more expensive graphics card to check out the same level of frame rate. But the question that I am definitely thinking to myself, and the one I honestly don't have an answer for yet, is whether this would be better if it was curved. I mean, obviously the 45-inch Corsair one that you can properly bend yourself is pretty awesome. I mean, there's no way that's worth the extortionate amount of money, really, for something like that. This is, what, like a third of the price? But if they had like a slight curve just to make those edges a little bit closer to you, I think that would be slightly better for my use case, but it is all going to come down to personal preference, really. So I wouldn't say it's by any means like a deal breaker, but it would make it slightly better for me. But again, for productivity, flat is definitely better anyway. As for the outright image quality, well, again, I'd say this pretty much sits in the middle of the road. It's not blowing my mind. I'm not looking at this and thinking it's one of the best displays that I've ever used. I mean, the contrast, I wouldn't say say is lacking, but the whole image is definitely a little bit more on the flatter side, which is a shame, but I guess you'd expect it for an IPS level that's sort of mid-tier. But overall, I'm definitely very happy using this. I don't think anyone would have any complaints. I guess the main problem really is that you don't get the contrast associated with V8, or of course the much better contrast that you get from OLED, but then also there isn't really any HDR on this. It does accept an HDR signal, but it's rated as HDR 400, which as we know is pretty useless. You've not got any clever like dimming systems or anything. It's not able to reproduce the top level of color. So maybe have a play around with it, but this is very much more a SDR monitor rather than like a crazy HDR one. But again, the price definitely reflects that. Well then everybody, I think that is enough gaming for one day. We've got some serious conclusion to talk about. I want to start by saying that this form factor could have the potential to be my new favourite form factor out of everything. I mean, it's not massively different to 38 inches, but I do think that that little bit extra screen definitely does help in the more visual type of game. And the reason that I like this so much and that I do really recommend it is because while it's definitely not a cheap monitor, £550, that's quite a decent chunk of a paycheck, right? I mean, the main weakness really of this is the fact that everything is pretty average, really. I mean, it looks good, it's very responsive, but it's not the best in any categories. It's a jack of all trades, master of none. And if you're looking for the best ultra-wide monitor when it comes to image quality and responsiveness, you actually want to look at a QD OLED, and you can get them on sale for about £750, $800 or so if you know where to look. But that's still going to be more expensive than this, and obviously you can save more money. You can go for something cheaper than this that's 34 inches, will have better image quality in terms of pixel density, but I think this really does nail the sweet spot for people that want a big monitor on their desk, because you don't have to worry about all of that vertical room from like a TV or something. But I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Do you agree with me that actually 40-inch ultra-wide, something you hadn't really seen before, is huge? I mean, quite literally, this could be something that really takes off, or do you think that there's room for improvement? This, for whatever reason, isn't what you want. HDR, or no HDR in this case, is a bit of a deal breaker. Let me know your thoughts. Smash the like button if you've enjoyed this. Get yourself subscribed. And very importantly, if you do want to check out current pricing on this and a load of other of my favorite gaming monitors, you can find all of those linked down below with my Amazon affiliate links. And of course, while you're down there, why not bask in the beauty of Corsair's new iCUE Link? This smart ecosystem eliminates those pesky RGB and fan cables from your system, allowing you to stack RGB devices with a smile. All the devices can be automatically set up and configured in iCUE with some exclusive effects, and the new QX RGB fans even have a temperature sensor inside them for monitoring air temps. Get yours today with the link down below. Thank you so much for watching this video. We'll catch you in the next one.